Hi, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda, and this is the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast.
This podcast is all about taking action and creating that badass business abundance and life that you want.
Where we share stories, laughs, wins, and epic fails to show you the whole picture of the entrepreneurial journey.
It's not just unicorns and rainbows, people.
Jump on and follow us through this raw and witty roller coaster,
where we get down and dirty and go behind the scenes of life and entrepreneurship.
Get on it,
get over it,
and get after it.
Hi, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. Welcome to the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast. I cannot believe we are in the second half of the year.
Me either.
Did that happen? What day is it? I don't understand this.
For the past few weeks, I don't even know what happened 3 days ago. It's just everything is just so intense and moving. It's got to be some woo-woo shit for sure. Like the moon, I don't know, but we're already halfway through. It's insane.
I don't think that the moon has anything to do with that. It's halfway through the year, Lynn. However,
well, kind of, because it's shown itself how many times.
Okay. Yes, I suppose technically the moon is involved in the changing of seasons and time. However, and we're talking today about maximizing the second half of your year. We are halfway through, and if you have not reached all of your business goals by June, guess what? It's time to try to reach those goals by December. We're halfway through, and we're talking today about the ways to maximize the second half of your year so you can finish the year strong.
Absolutely. Hey, and if you have finished all of your goals by the end of June, it's either one of two things. You're an effing rock star and you're supercharged on NAS or something. And I don't even know if that's a correct term, but go with me.
It is now.
Or you didn't really have any goals, or they weren't very stretchy. So one or the other, people, because that's pretty incredible. But you should be about 50% or more. Really, that's where you should be sitting. If you don't know how to measure your goals, you should hit a sister up, because I love my process. I do love my process. But that brings us to the first point: is you need to know where you're at. A lot of people set their goals and they just put it on a shelf. They don't think anything of it. They might bring it out every once in a while. It might be that little niggle in their back of their brain that's like, oh, I want to hit this goal, or I want to do this. But essentially, you've lost steam. You have forgotten half the goals that you set. You haven't looked at it. And the first thing that you need to do is pull them out and evaluate, assess where you're at. Know what has been accomplished, what hasn't, which balls are rolling. It's really important for you to know, get a pulse check of where you're currently at.
Yes, this is what I sort of call your self-audit. And you can do it personal, you can do it on your business side, your family side, whatever it is for your goals. And it's really just important for you to know where you are and what's working and what isn't working. Because at this point in the year, you may have set up your goals, and some of your goals, you're rocking it and you're halfway there and you're 3/4 of the way there, whatever it is. And then other goals, you've fallen flat. And sometimes there's a correlation between those. And sometimes it's just that you've set up a system for one thing to work and you've ignored the other, or just kind of it's a lofty goal with no real direction, or goals that have been put in place with action steps. So that self-audit is really, really important. And analyzing what you're doing and what's working and what isn't is really a key part of that. So, and that could go on many facets of your business. That could be a social media audit. Okay, which social media platforms are actually bringing me return? What types of posts that I'm making are actually bringing me followers, likes, comments, more importantly, clients? What's bringing me that revenue? And break it down by each thing that you're doing. So it's, your marketing efforts, your advertising efforts, your employee retention, your outreach, whatever it is that was part of your goal, do a check-in and find out and break down what is working and why it's working. Because just knowing that one ad on Instagram really was stoked for you, that doesn't mean anything if you can't break it down and give me a repeatable result. And that's what that little half-year audit is sort of finding out what's working, what isn't. How far along are you in your goals? Have you even set appropriate goals for yourself? And that's something for those people who've already met all your goals, that might be one of the ones for you. So if you've already met every goal you have for the year, you're not shooting high enough, in my opinion. And you could just be a super amazing rock star. But even still, if you're a super amazing rock star, you set yourself some more goals. Set yourself some more goals.
Absolutely. I definitely agree that the audit comes before the assessment. They kind of go hand in hand, but they are slightly different. I mean, first is one, just taking a look, and then really like assessing is like making the plan to to essentially like make sure that you're in alignment, to make sure that you have all of the things that you need to do in order to move forward. And I think that that's really important. Absolutely.
Yes. Along those lines of what you're looking at. So personally, I like to break it up between my more personal goals and my business goals. I always keep them separate. I know everybody's really surprised that I keep personal and business separate. I think I pretty much wrote an entire book about that. So keeping things separate. And I do analyze them and go over them almost always in June or July. I go through everything and really make those plans for the rest of the year. And the goals look very different depending on the first 2 quarters and depending on what's going on in my life or what I foresee coming up. So part of this sort of proactive looking at your business and your life is setting yourself up for success. If you know big things are coming, or you have like a huge travel thing coming up, or there's going to be a disrupt in your life in any way, shape, or form, this is the time that you kind of pre-plan. What are you going to do to maximize the work that you're doing so that that's not even really a thing? Like maybe you're going to take, for me, I'm going to take a month off. Well, I never really take a month off. Let's be honest. I'm a workaholic. I love to work. So I'm taking a month off by moving locations for a month. And because of that, I have to set up some systems to make sure that things like balls don't drop while I'm gone at one business or another. I might be hyper focusing on one business and quote unquote slacking off on another, but that doesn't mean that business stops. It just means that I'm moving and shifting priorities. So when you know things are coming up, it's really important to look at all those things. Now in your business, for me anyway, I always separate out by what genre inside the business, like what topic or task inside the business. So maybe that's, so marketing, advertising, your revenue streams, sales, whoever I need to, and maybe that's just me, depending on the business. It might just be solopreneur city where I've got to do all those things, but it's important that I lay out the groundwork of what I expect and have specific goals for each of those tasks, because otherwise it's too overwhelming for me to say like, I'm going to reach, 3 commas this year. And then it's too broad. I need to really in order to hyper focus, I really need to get down and specify in each thing what I expect. So what I expect from my advertising, what I expect from my marketing, what I expect from my team, what I expect from my revenue streams, and make a very specific measurable goal. And for those of you who know about SMART goals, it shouldn't be a shocker on there. And if you're interested, we have downloadables on that. We're happy to provide that for you. But for me, it's really about hyper focusing and really trying to get as specific as possible. So I have an action step that I can actually do every day or work towards every day, rather than an overwhelmingly broad goal that doesn't really have any measurable steps. So that by the time I get around to the last quarter, I realize that I haven't really done anything in the third quarter, which happens a lot.
Absolutely. You actually said something that's really key there in the assess kind of like bucket, is you said what you expect. So you're actually envisioning the result, and then you're creating the action steps in order to move forward. So you're taking that pillar and looking at what you want to happen or what you expect to happen, and making the bite-sized chunks. We say all the time, like, you're not like the journey isn't in big leaps and bounds. It really is in the everyday tasks, the everyday actions, the everyday steps that you are going to get there. And when we can look at the big picture and essentially bento box it down or reverse engineer it, and we do that again in the mid-year to make sure that we are on the right path, making sure that we are creating the right plan, that we aren't scrapping things that are working or continuing to like shoot in the dark, or the whole stop, stop, recreating the wheel every time is extremely important. We waste so much time and energy. And by you actually saying, okay, what do I expect? That helps you refocus on the path that you want to go to. And I love that you do it on a micro level as well. And then you can put in the action steps. It's really important in the assessment part to like just, look at what's worked. So you do have your audit where you're just kind of looking backwards, in my opinion, getting a pulse check. The assessment is like, okay, like with all of this said, like what has really worked? Where do I want to go? Is it still in alignment? And how can I essentially reconnect, which we'll get into the third part, which is adjust, is like really like boiling it down to that. And I would say even on top of that, and I know Amanda does this, and I've done this in the past as well, as then, especially if you have goals that you really want to hit, where are you putting those goals in order to be able to like see them on a constant basis? Is that on your screen, on your phone? Is that on your laptop? Where is that? Because the more that you're looking at it and not obsessing over them, because that can be something else, but essentially like those bite-sized things, where are they, where you can get a snapshot of where you're at if you're still on path and move forward. Because in the assessment side, and when you're breaking everything down, if you actually don't do something with that, put that into your calendar, have some kind of mechanism, which is one I love my little goal spreadsheet, but have some kind of mechanism so that way you know where you're at moving forward, then you're still going to find you can do all of this and you're still going to find yourself in the same spot. The last thing I'll say about assessment too is like assessing what has gotten in your way. So that's auditing, right? Like you are auditing everything, but then assessment is like, okay, ask yourself why. So the assessment part is like digging in deeper. Why was this continuing to get in my way? Like what habit am I continuing to like move forward with that's not helping me, that's hindering me? Where, and Amanda said this earlier, it's not just about the goals, it's also about the people and the networks and the things. Are you getting what you want to get out of it? What I'll say about that, though, is the finger is always pointing to you first. Are you giving what you need in order to get out of it first? And if you are, and you're not getting the results, then it's time to make a change. So just all of that and so much more in the assessment aspect of setting yourself up for the second half of the year.
Yes. And I'll add one more thing onto it till we move on to our next point, which is the big talk these days that I hear a lot is, oh, as long as you're consistent, you'll see results as long as you're consistent. And that's true. And I'm going to add to that, if you're consistently doing the wrong things and consistently doing things that are negating everything you're doing or trying to do, then that's consistently going to get you nowhere. Mm-hmm. So consistency is great. And you do want to work every day. And that's why we but often talk about doing just a little bit every day. So even if the day has gone to hell and you can't get anything done, if you spend just 10, 15, 20 minutes working towards your goal, that in itself can be consistency if you're working the right way. But if you're consistently doing crap and consistently doing the wrong thing, you're consistently going to get the results you don't want.
Absolutely. I think of the quote, and I'm sure this is written in one or both of our books, is my coach used to say, you practice how you play how you practice. So if you're practicing half-ass, then your play is half-ass. And eventually you train your fibers of your being, your mind, your body, whatever, to continue to only produce in that capacity. And so absolutely what you're saying. And one other kind of aspect to that is it is really hard, really easy to kind of like get a little off track. And when you're just slightly off track and you keep going, you get further and further off track. And if you're not assessing, auditing and assessing where you're at, then, which is the third point, is you don't know to adjust back to the area that you're going because you think you're moving in the right direction, but really like you're slightly off course. So you're not going to hit your mark, right? But at the end of the day, it starts with you. You have to look at you first.
Yes. So we're auditing, we're assessing, and then we are adjusting. So there are so many things that I adjust. I feel like I adjust things every single day because you just have to make these mental shifts. And sometimes it's a physical shift. Sometimes it's just a mindset shift because you could get to halfway through the year and realize that you've been sitting in scarcity the whole first 6 months of the year, not even really grasping it and really understanding how that can negatively affect everything that you do. Even if you're still going through the motions, sometimes just a mindset shift will make all the difference in the second half of the year, positively or negatively. So maybe you're sitting in abundance your first 6 months, and then something happens and you realize that you aren't on goal, you aren't on track. And then you shift your mindset and suddenly the second half of the year, you're in scarcity and you're only negating all that hard work you did the first half of the year. So finding those ways to adjust and making sure that the adjustment isn't going to set you back is just as important. I mean, I think all the pieces are important, but that's one of the things I always look for is how can I adjust in a way that's going to positively impact the actions that I do and the ultimate results that I'm looking to achieve.
Yeah, I will add to that too. And I love that you said that, Amanda, because I do want to make a clear point is that sometimes adjustment is taking a couple steps backward. But what Amanda is saying is that it's not completely getting you off track. So sometimes we have to clear the clutter in order to be able, and that does feel like steps backwards. And sometimes it's actual steps backwards, and sometimes it is more the feeling of steps backwards. However, I will tell you that, and I know Amanda believes this, is that is needed in order to move towards your direction. Because if you sometimes try to continue from the point that you're at, it's harder, it's messier, it's not as efficient. So really making sure that you are taking that blow, taking that and do it with grace, but that it's going to move you forward. Because sometimes, and I've worked, and I know Amanda and I have spoken about this, about ourselves, but also our clients, working with clients, and we've had to have them course correct, and they have such a hard time with it. We have too, because it feels like we're moving backwards, or it's a blow to our ego because we've done all of this, but really it wasn't in line with the bigger picture. It was great, but it wasn't getting them what they wanted to get done. They were too busy over here. And we're guilty of this as well. And I think though it's easier sometimes to look from the outside in to say, whoa, babe, like, this is why you're not getting the results. You're blaming everything else, but you're playing in the wrong pool. You're not even in the pool that you're supposed to be in. And that's what this is about. It's so easy when we actually pay attention. And I take that back. I would say it's simple, but sometimes it's not easy. It's the simplicity of it is really beautiful, but sometimes it's hard to actually like do that. But the adjustment part can feel uncomfortable, and it's okay. Just keep in mind, is it focused on the bigger goal? Am I doing what I need to do in order to get there? Am I making sure I'm setting up the foundations and the fundamentals in the process, if I haven't already, in the process of moving forward? And also the adjustment side, there are times, I know I said it earlier about like, you might need to course correct. You want to keep the balls moving where the balls need to be moving. And sometimes you do have to scrap things. Like, one of the analogies I always think of when I think of this is, I remember when I was young, I just graduated high school and I had my first hoopty. And that car I sunk so much money into. And I learned how to fix brakes. I learned how to like do all kinds of like basic maintenance, right? I think fixing brakes is basic maintenance, you know. But my girlfriend's father would teach me because my dad obviously wasn't around. And he's like, you know what, Lynn, sometimes, because I'm sinking all this money into this hoopty that probably cost me like $500, $600, maybe $1,000 to buy. I don't even know. Like, I don't even remember. And he's like, you know, there comes a time where you have to like cut that off. Like, you're investing too much money into something that's only going to get you so far. And that's true. Sometimes we have to cut the hemorrhaging in the adjustment period and like let it go. But the majority of the time, it's good enough for now and it can help us move forward. And so in this phase, in the adjustment phase, there are some decisions that need to be made, because sometimes you do have to keep that ball rolling until you can start another ball. Sometimes you continue that ball, you just redirect it. And sometimes you scrap that ball all in its entirety.
Absolutely. I was just thinking, you mentioned that sometimes it's easier to see it from the outside. And I think this is one of the reasons that I always, without fail, reach out to at least somebody in my executive team in the middle of the year. And
same.
I go over, okay, like if I know I always reach out to my accountant. Okay, like let's look at my books. Like taxes are done. I've already filed, probably late. And what can we do now to maximize what I've done? And what do I need to do in order to maximize where I'm going to be next year? So I always meet with my accountant this halfway through the year. I usually meet with one of some legal team. I usually meet with a mentor, a coach, or someone like Lynn, where we're talking about where our businesses are going. And it's easier for someone else to come from the outside and see it. And this is often the case when Lynn and I are talking, it's not like I don't know what she's going to say. However, it helps to hear somebody else say it so I can get off my butt and do it. Because a lot of times you can talk yourself out of like, oh, well, you know, I know this is something I'm doing right now, but it's fine. Like, I know that I've taken on this extra stress, but like, I'm fine. It's fine. I can do it. And you need someone else to be like, no, you're being ridiculous. You're slipping into your old habits. You are overdoing everything. You're taking on way too much. You're adding on way more stress. You need to listen to your body. And even though I know those things, I inherently know them. I teach about it. I tell my clients to do it. Having somebody else from the outside who knows me, knows my business, knows what's going on, to say like, this is where you need to readjust. And whether or not I do it is on me. However, it's nice to have an executive team of people, paid and unpaid, and I say it all the time, it's paid and unpaid, that can put me back on track when I can't do it myself, or give me the push to put me back on track when I know I need to do it and I'm just avoiding it for whatever reason. There's plenty of reasons I avoid it. So
absolutely, they can see the forest through the trees. And I know that this is one of the reasons why we love what we do, because we are that source for so many. And we also, just like Amanda said, we also have a team. We have hired coaches, consultants. We have hired other people, like as in we pay other people, but we also have unpaid people that we can rely on to support us. It's important. Those that are the most successful in life have outside guidance. You know, the top athletes, the top CEOs, the top producers in the world, even the royal families and the people who run different worlds, they have advisors, and there's a reason for that. And I would say when you're reaching out, before we go on to the last point, when you're reaching out, like make sure that it is the right person for the right reasons. And sometimes we grow out of the individual that has been helping us. So if we are continuing to get the same results with the same team of people, it's time to maybe adjust that. It doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that they're not the right fit for this particular environment that you're in. So just a little side note about that, which leads us into the last one, is action, like taking action. You cannot get different results doing the same things over and over again, right? Isn't that the definition of insanity?
Definition of insanity.
Yeah. So now it's time to put in the action. And what action steps are you going to be putting in? So you've already audited, you've assessed, you have adjusted. So that means you've written up a new plan. Now is the action plan. Now, what are you going to do? First thing is probably putting into your calendar, like put those benchmarkers into your calendar. Look at what steps I can do today, 3 steps today, that's going to get me towards that goal. Constantly be asking yourself. I can tell you when I'm in this mode, and or when my clients are, because I make them, when they're in this mode of like every day, I need another me. We need another us. When they sit there and actually ask themselves on a morning, every morning, they ask themselves, what are 3 things that I can do today to get me to that particular goal, to that particular expectation, to that particular end result? They are more on track and they surpass their goals than those who do not wake up every day. And it's a simple question. What can I do today that is better than yesterday, that can put me closer to where I want to be tomorrow? And tomorrow as in the goals. Like, absolutely, hands down. If you did that, if you did all the other 3, and then actually every day asked yourself that and made decisions, didn't ignore the voice, but actually made decisions based on what is said, you will hit those markers. Like, you will hit your goals. Like, there's just like, it's because you are consciously making a daily decision and putting forth the action in order to move that marker towards your goal.
Yes. And I love doing that. And I also do one other thing at night, which is almost like the negative version of what you just said. I swear it. So at night, I ask myself, what are a few things that I did that day that did not serve me? So what did I do over the course of the day that was a distraction, that made me go crazy, that became a stressor that it didn't need to be? And I assess, and usually it's like just in bed, and it's not like this formal thing that I do where I like write down all the things I did wrong
Why
that
we
day.
don't sleep.
True, right? But it's more of just taking a time, like, oh, and I'll give you a very easy example that I think a lot of people do. You find yourself staying up till 2:00 in the morning and not getting proper sleep because you needed to take a break by watching Netflix for 6 hours. And when I sit in bed and I think about, okay, what was a better use of my time? Like zoning out for, it's never going to be 6 hours, let's be honest. Zoning out for an hour, because 6 hours, that's a crazy amount of time. Zoning out for an hour on Netflix, did that hurt or help me? And sometimes the answer is it helped me. So sometimes I really needed that downtime. And sometimes it was just avoiding something I knew I needed to do. So it's not that the actual item is bad, inherently bad. It's, am I avoiding something by doing it, or did it help me in some way? And so I do an assessment at night, and I do it for my personal side too. Like, what made me a better or a worse mom that day? Like, when did I lose my cool, we'll say, and when did I recover it? And so it just helps me regroup and then set my intentions for the next day. Again, I'm just in bed. Sometimes I'll write it out. Sometimes I won't. But it helps me. These are the things that didn't serve me today. How can I make it better tomorrow? What can I add to my action plan that I know I'm already going to do to duplicate the good stuff and avoid duplicating the bad stuff?
I love that. I mean, what I would say to that, and actually I think of a story, what I would say to that, and you did say this at the end, is like, you're not just assessing what went wrong, then you're moving forward from it. So don't sit in the shit, like pull yourself out of it. I would say if your mind doesn't work that way and you kind of sit in the what I did wrong, just acknowledge, write it out, and then write out what you did right, because that could help balance it. And I think of a story of like when my kids were young and we were still married. I was still married to my ex, and every day we'd sit down for dinner and we'd be like, okay, how did our day go? And everybody would say, and I would be like, well, I didn't get this done, I didn't do this, and I still need to do this and this and this. And my ex looked at me, then husband, and he's like, babe, like, can you celebrate what you did do? Can you look at all the things you did accomplish? And it was like a mindset shift. Even though I've always been more of the optimistic person, like I got into this pattern of super analyzing all the crap that I didn't do right. And I wasn't necessarily looking at, and especially for those of us that are doers, we forget to look at all the things that we did do right. So, Amanda, I think that is a great thing. However, I would add that aspect to it. Don't sit in it. Make sure that you are actually like thinking of how to move forward. And if that doesn't quite sit well with you, then think of the things that you didn't do so well, and then think of the things that you did do well. And you can actually do all three as well. But you don't, kind of like, you never want to go to bed angry. Like, you don't want to go to bed with that stressor because Amanda also said one other thing. Then she sets her intentions for the following day, which I'm so proud of you. I know it's not woo-woo intentions, but I'm still going to think they're a little woo-woo.
Well, thank you. But it's more like, these are the things I'm going to do in this order.
These are my action. This is my action step.
These are my action steps for the day. And I like lull myself to sleep by like reading my list of to-dos. I don't count sheep. I count to-dos.
I love you. I love you tons. But this action is super important. And I know that we're giving you kind of a high level, we want to make this applicable. So that action is where people actually don't accomplish their goals. So this last step is super important and probably the least applied. So it's really important for you to make sure that you are taking daily actions, daily steps to get to that goal, because they're not, and I believe in manifestation. However, manifestation does not happen without the work. There's luck. I almost said the F word. There is luck. I mean, not that we don't curse on our podcast. There is luck. I am not doubting that. And there is like setting the intention and allowing things to happen in flow, and action is, you have to take action to accomplish the goals. Otherwise, it's just kind of loosey-goosey and whimsical. And hey, if that's you, this is probably not your podcast. So you're probably not listening. And
Yeah.
the action step is needed. So make sure, and I would really start with putting it into your calendar, doing the daily assessments and or even the weekly assessments. If daily, because you have to know yourself. Like, and this is a super personal thing that I'm going to share outside of it, because you need to know your own triggers, right? So I'll give you an example. I will never look at my weight, like when I go to the doctor, because I know it will trigger me. I'm bigger framed. I've had my own like female eating crap in my years, and I always know my weight doesn't reflect like how I feel in my body, because I've always been bigger framed. I've always seem to weigh more than what I appeared to weigh, because I'm just a solid person. And I know this is super personal and super random. However, I know I will not look at that scale because it is going to trigger me. So if you know that looking at things on a daily basis will trigger you and put you more into analysis by paralysis or give you anxiety, then do it on a weekly basis. Do it on a fortnight basis, which is every other week, which I never knew, by the way, until I started like working with all these Europeans. I was like, what the? But yeah, so make sure that you are setting up a system that's not going to trigger you, stretch you, yes, but you're creating it. And if it is, again, this is also why an outside person helps, because then they can help be your grounding mechanism and your grounding tool to help make sure that you're staying accountable. And that's what I do for my clients. Some of my clients are really triggered, and we just go through the goal spreadsheet when we're together, but then I can hold them accountable and follow up with them in between, because they know that they get lost in the weeds and get way too overwhelmed. So just make sure that you are setting up a system that is going to push you forward and not pull you into a dark hole.
100%. I feel like we say this all the time. You got to deep dive, know yourself, know your triggers, know what's working and what isn't, because knowing yourself and investing in yourself is the best thing that you can do.
Absolutely. So just to recap, first, you need to audit where you're at. Then you need to assess. Then you're going to actually put in the adjustment. So what needs to be adjustment, and then map out and start doing the action. So the 4 A's, of the mid-year check-in and accomplishing and finishing out your year like the boss you are.
Like a badass.
That's right. So I guess until next time.
Get after it.
All right, everyone. It's not enough to just listen.
Now you've got to put it into action.
We are so excited to see what you do next.
If you enjoyed our show, please leave us a review on iTunes.
And to find out more about what we're doing, visit us at thepursuitofbadasserie.com.